Sanjeev, the other recommendation, lending to this sector should be treated as priority sector lending. Quite helpful, one would say. What would you say?
Yes, because the final rate of interest that the borrowers are charged is partly dependent on the cost of funds for a microfinance institution. If you notice, most NBFCs are no longer allowed to access deposits. So, and even for banks, I mean, banks have their priority sector obligation, so it suits their purpose too. And as long as they're allowed to access priority sector funds, there's always a better chance that the final cost of lending would be that much lower.
Okay. So this is again a good measure. Dr. Sharma, your view on priority sector lending?
Yeah, I think we badly need this priority sector work because for thousands of years there was no solution for the poor people because they were not having any security or collateral type thing. Now this model joint liability group or self-help group has been evolved from the system only, and if somehow government is able, our bureaucracy is able, our banking system is able to deploy some funds for the poor, then it should be and it might be treated as priority sector, and it's a pious cause and it's a welfare government. We are a democratic country. For the welfare of the whole country, even for the whole economy, it is necessary to treat it as priority sector.
Okay. Professor Bhattacharya, how will this help in the growth of the sector?
Two ways. See, commercial banks in any case are asked to lend a certain percentage of their total credit to the priority sector, defined rural, small, cottage industry and export, of course. Now, earlier they were directly lending to agriculture and getting burned. So they were taking the capital out from there and started lending in the name of agriculture to those companies dealing in agriculture.
Okay.
That's not actually benefiting the farmers. Here, the commercial banks will have an institutions to back them up. They are not directly dealing with the farmers because they don't know. They are not directly dealing with the informal sector because they don't know. So they are going to lend through the microfinance institutions who will be having their catchment area, their own in networking. So microfinance institutions in turn will get an assured capital, because alternatively if they have to mobilize through deposits, they have to offer a high rate of interest because they are not themselves having a large capital base. Particularly if the depositors are to know that your deposits will be used for lending to the farmers and that to a non-collateral basis quite a lot.
Yeah.
So there will be a withdrawal of that kind of things. So I think it is a good idea. It will satisfy both the purposes, lending and getting the capital out.
Okay. Sanjeev, now what I come to is probably what you were indicating in the beginning when you said that it is tending towards micromanagement of affairs too much. Recommending a variation in the tenure of loans and commencement recovery, and then also saying that at the most 2 MFIs should lend to a single borrower. Is this what you were indicating to in the beginning, or do you approve of these measures, these recommendations?
No, I don't. I don't think they're going to be easy to enforce. And some of this change had come from within the sector, because a year ago, a little more than a year ago, the bigger microfinance institutions formed something called Microfinance Institution Network.
Yeah.
And they had come up with a code of conduct which I think limited the number of microfinance companies lending to an individual to 3, if I'm not mistaken. They said only 3 can lend.
Okay.
But even that had created problems within the industry, because one had heard from some of these smaller companies who are not part of this network that by doing so, you're actually keeping some of these smaller companies out.
Okay.
You know, once you set an entry barrier like this.
Okay.
Now,
How are you keeping the smaller companies out?
because if you say only 2 or 3 can lend, typically the bigger ones have lower cost of funds.
Okay.
Because they're able to access more bank finance, they may have equity funding, they may have multiple other sources of funding.
Okay.
So they tend to take up the first 2 or 3 slots, and there are others who are being kept out.
Okay.
And we've seen in this industry, and as well as other industries, the more number of people who come in, you eventually, it's a messy process, but you eventually end up with lower rates, you end up with slightly better conditions.
Okay.
And given the nature of microfinance, given the fact that it happens in villages, you have, as Professor Bhattacharya said, it's very difficult for a regulator to really monitor the end use. You're going to end up with a situation where on paper you'll have only 3 lenders, but you'll actually end up having 6 or 7, where some of it would not really be recorded properly. You're going to end up with a lot of diversion. It's just going to end up in a more messy situation. But besides that, I just think entry barriers of this sort are not going to help the poor very much, because it's just going to keep some people away from them.
Okay. So the choice will get limited.
Yeah.
As the greater
the moment
choice
you try and
that
limit
they could have
choice,
had,
the cost of loans are going to go up.
Dr. Sharma, your view on this?
Somewhere this committee has mentioned that we regard the privacy of the database of the companies, and at another place they are saying that one member is one person can be a member of only one group, and somewhere they are saying that 2 MFIs can give loan at a time. So there is a contradiction.
Okay. There is self-contradiction.
Yeah, so this is the thing. Second thing, the ceiling of rupees 25,000 maximum loan. So this is also not fair. People who are very ambitious, hard-working, or so many things they can do for their enterprises for trial and error period. They need more fund flow. So this capping is not good for the poor people. So many things which should be taken care of.
If an individual borrower has a greater choice of companies from whom he can borrow, from whom he or she can borrow, if he has access to 4 or 5 or maybe 6 different MFIs, will that be good for the borrower in the long run?
Actually, here I want to comment one thing. This committee in the beginning has said that the microfinance sector covers a range of services which include, in addition to the provision of credit, many other services such as savings, insurance, money transfers, counseling, etc. Then they are saying subcommittee has confined itself to only one aspect of microfinance, namely the provision of credit to low-income groups. One aspect, that is credit. Credit to lower income groups. Actually, if we are not seeing the picture in totality, the things are going to be messy. Here I want to mention one word, this is counseling. Let us take this word seriously in the part of counseling. Suppose like we are doing, and so many MFIs are also doing this counseling work, we are giving 1 week training. In this training, we are giving them training for how to use these funds. So simultaneously, we are giving them training to have spiritual upliftment. If spiritually people are not uplifted, the things they are ego-oriented, they are jealous to each other, they are damaging each other. So many leg pulling, etc. things are there. They are happy on the damages to the other people. So we are giving them the message to love each other, to have care for each other, and help each other to grow.
So this is what the committee is referring to when it mentions the word counseling.
No, actually, committee is saying that we are only concerned about the credit. But I think it should be taken care of.
So you are saying the committee is not looking at the sector in totality.
In totality.
Okay.
So if sector is not conscious about the spiritual upliftment, it should be conscious, and ultimate
there is a social role also which MFIs are fulfilling.
Ultimate owners of the portfolio are the banks. So banks should be conscious who are the MFIs, who are the directors, and they should be conscious that whether the input of spirituality is there or not. Otherwise, we are unable to serve the poor.
Okay. Professor Bhattacharya, very interesting. Two things. I mean, one by one, I would like to ask your opinion on this. But the second thing, which Dr. Sharma just mentioned, there is a social role also which MFIs are fulfilling on account of them being so closely connected with the borrowers, with the poor population of this country. There is a social role that they're fulfilling, counseling, and so many things, as Dr. Sharma was saying. Now, that the committee does not seem to be looking at. In totality, not the role of the MFIs, just looking at the credit provision services of MFIs. Is that really good for the sector?
See, it has been observed mixing up multiple objectives creates difficulty in not only implementation, even monitoring the progress. Supposing there is a microfinance institutions which has loan and it's not performing well. But evaluation report, it says, but I did a lot of work on social work and counseling. How will the regulatory body evaluate this? So in one sense, one thing should be clear. You see, there are many charitable organizations, religious trust. I came to know that one in the South Canada. Temple money is used for microfinance, and it's one of the most successful microfinance institutions in the country. People know they are taking money from temple, so everybody respects, nobody tries to misuse.
Okay.
And for everything they come to the temple head, who is was considered to be a very respectable person. So they seek his advice. For my marriage, should I actually spend more?
Okay.
Will you lend me this much? He will advise, given your income.
Is there a government regulation of this?
That is at the moment under charitable trust.
Okay.
Now, the question is, here is a very successful classic charitable trust. Would you like all microfinance institutions presently saying on the one hand, I don't want cap in the interest rate, means you have business motivation. And then says, I will be, however, doing some social work. So I think that should be very clearly defined. My opinion is, even if you can provide a reasonable low cost credit to the farmers and small sector, that itself is a great social work. Counseling is only limited to, look, you have come for 25,000, actually your repayment capacity is 15. Don't try to ruin yourself, and also probability of getting the money back from the side. So that kind of model will be far more successful. Let the charitable social work counseling be done by other organizations, but business will not be mixed up. Business and charity never goes together anywhere in the world.
Okay, that seems like a very pertinent point. Dr. Sharma will be in a good position to take that up. It's time for me to slip into a break. I'll bring that question to you after the break. If there are multiple objectives of an institution, how does that help in the regulation of that institution? When regulation does come about on this sector in India, will that help this sector? How will an institution which is dealing in various activities, providing